Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Digital Media Commons Workshop series, where we help you discover, learn, create, and publish your creative works. Today, we're going to be working on the Advanced Illustrator tutorial for biosciences, and we're making a neuron. So the first thing you want to do is open your new file and name it Practice Neuron. Feel free to copy the dimensions I have here. Illustrator is a really great tool for making logos, illustrations, and vectors, which are essentially infinitely scalable like shapes and objects. And we're going to be working in this specific workspace, Essentials. Now, you can use Illustrator to do all of these separate things, like image tracing and stuff like that, but we're going to be focusing on just the Essentials today. So reset Essentials and make sure we're all on the same page. Now, the first thing we're going to do is upload our PNG, the reference that we're going to be using from the Britannica. This is the neuron that we're going to be using, so it's going to be linked in the video description, so feel free to grab it there. I'm going to press Command-C to copy, and then Command-F to place, or Command-V to paste. Now that we have it here, we want to make sure that this is set to 50% opacity so we can see what we're working on and it's not so opaque. And we're going to make sure that this is locked. So after you select it, press Command-2. And now it's locked and you can't edit it. Now, to navigate Illustrator, all you have to do is press spacebar to pan and press Alt-Scroll to zoom. We're going to be focusing on this section here, and we're going to be using the pen tool. So the tools that we're going to be able to use through this tutorial are the regular selection tool, the direct selection tool, the pen tool, the spiral tool, which is going to be in a different section, this rectangle tool as well, this gradient tool, and this width tool. Now we're going to go to the pen tool, or the shortcut for that is P, and we're going to select here. Now this is an anchor point, and you want to put this other anchor point at the end of a curve. So like right here, and don't let go. You want to drag it up and make that curve. Now the reason why there's a white space right here is because the fill right now is white. So you want to set that to transparent, and you want to set the stroke to black, just so we can see what's going on. Now, we're going to finish up this shape. Press Enter with the pen tool and make the rest of this. I'm going to do like a slight curve like this. Perfection. And to move this around, all you have to do is press your regular selection tool and move it around. So, or V. Now there's a difference, as you see, because you can also make this using a different method. With the pen tool, you can press here, 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 and here, and make really sharp angles and then smooth them out. So what you want to do is press the direct selection tool. Now the difference between the regular selection tool and the direct selection tool is the regular selection tool lets you move around the whole shape, but the direct selection tool lets you edit the actual anchors within the shape. So for example, if I select this anchor, I can move it around without everything else moving. Now I want to select this anchor, and you see this little circle here. This essentially bevels or rounds out that edge. So you want to hold this and move it like that. And that applies for every single corner that you make. Right, there we go. We essentially formed similar shapes using two different methods. I'm going to delete the shape and stick with this one. And now I want you guys to use the same strategy to build all of these other branches. I'll do it right with you. So build one here, curve, one here, and curve. Cool. Another one here, and here, curve. And one here, and here, curve. Now, if you don't like how this looks, you can always round it out. Press it, if it's a corner, and it rounds out. There you go. Let's keep going. Select the pen tool again with P or by clicking it over there. Curve. And here. And I'm going to demonstrate the sharp corners one again. So I'm going to select here, 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 and here. And then we're going to go with the direct selection tool or A. Go to these corners, pull them up, pull them up. There you go. I'm going to finish the last of these branches here. And we can learn after how to enlarge these lines. So they're kind of thin right now. There we go. So to make sure all of these lines are thicker to match our reference, all we have to do is use the contextual menu. So this right-hand side here changes depending on what you select. If you want to select this thing, all of these things pop up. But if you select multiple things, like these two lines, other options pop up, like this Pathfinder tool. We're going to be using this later, but what I want you to do is select this main branch right here and go to stroke. Now I want this stroke to be a little thicker, so you can make it thick like this, and you can use a different method. So to really form this like thin to thick shape right here, I want you to make this 3-point and then press the stroke itself. Now there are a lot of hidden menus in Illustrator that you can find. So if you go to stroke and click that, this menu for how to change the stroke and how the line ends and begins pops up. So if you press this cap, you can press round cap right here, and this makes all of the caps of this thing round. And then you can also press this profile, which essentially changes how it begins and ends. So this is the thin to thick to thin. This is the thick to thin. And we're going to be using this one actually. So we're going to place this and we're going to press the flip button to make sure that it's actually flipped along the right edge. Now, how do I make this manually thicker? Like say I don't like the way that this looks and I want to change it a bit. I can go to this width tool right here, press it, and then go to the places I want to thicken up and thicken it up. So for example, see, now that's thicker. I'm gonna undo this a bit because it looks like I switched the width of this edge here, or this corner here. And we're gonna, oh, there we go. And I want to make this not so fine a point. So I'm going into our width tool, or Shift W, getting to this corner and kind of making it a little bigger. So right here, and there we go. Now we can see that point. I'm gonna make this a little thicker, but you can make this as thick or as thin as you want. I'm just gonna try to match our reference right here. There we go. Now, for the rest of these, we're gonna do the very same thing. We're gonna grab the base, thicken it up, grab the base, thicken it up, and do the very same thing. Feel free to use the width profile method, because that's also a useful tool. After I do all of this, I want to round out these caps. So what I'm going to do is select everything, press your regular selection tool, and make a big box. And go to stroke and round caps. And now all of the caps are all rounded out. Now if you don't like the way that these look, or that the way that it made them, you can always edit these. So you can always make this smaller. You can go back into the width tool and make this thicker. Etc., etc. Now I'm going to leave this as they are right now. And we're going to move on to the actual lines and paths. So when we made the pen tool, we essentially created a singular path, right? But this is an open path because it's not like a filled shape. A closed path would be something like this. So how do we make this turn into something like this? Well, first thing you want to do is press Command Y. This is like an X-ray vision sort of thing that lets you see what the paths are. So the paths are currently these very thin lines, but if I want them to look like this shape right here, all you have to do is a destructive process called expanding. Now since this is a destructive process, I want to make a save file. So press this regular selection tool, select everything, and I want you to hold down the Alt button while clicking this if you're on a Mac. If you're on Windows, you want to press Control Alt. Press, move it over, and this is our save point, and this is what we're going to be working on. So to expand this thing, to make it the whole shape look like this instead of this, select it all, go to Object, and then go to Expand Appearance. Now, when you look into the Command Y X-ray Vision menu, you can see that all of this turned into the same shape. Now, remember when I said that contextual menus change depending on what you select? That tool, the Pathfinder tool that I showed you before, will be useful in this case because I want to make it so that those overlapping things don't show up anymore. So if I press all of this and press Unite, then when I press Command Y again, now it's just a singular shape, a singular closed path. I really like Pathfinder tool, so if I wanted, I can add it to my workspace right here. So it always pops up even if I'm not selecting multiple objects. I go to Windows and go to Pathfinder, and it's going to pop up here, and I can actually just put it straight onto this menu right here. Now it always pops up, and I can always use it for anything that comes up. So right now we're going to make sure that this branch is duplicated out to have multiple branches, since this neuron has multiple. And we're just going to do the very same method of Alt-clicking and then rotating by grabbing this little corner and moving it. Same thing, grab corner, okay, oh shoot. Grab corner, grab that corner, rotate it, and then do the same thing. I'm going to make this one actually a little smaller. All you have to do is press Shift, grab this corner, and scale it down by like moving your cursor that direction. And that'll make sure that it's a uniform scale down. And perfect. All right, there's our neuron. I'm going to move this to the side a little. And feel free to design these any way you wish. I just am following the references as closely as I can. So the next thing we're going to do is make the cell body. Now, if you go to the rectangle tool right here, any menu that has a arrow pointing down to the bottom right means that you can expand it. So press this, and you'll see the ellipse tool right here. I'm going to use the ellipse tool to drag out and make an oval, but you can also press and then designate the dimensions, and then it'll make it. But I will use this right now. Kind of move it around, make it a little thinner this way. There we go. There's our cell body. Now if we go into our X-ray vision again, we see that these are all separate shapes, but I don't want them to be the same. I want them to all combine together to form the same thing. So what I'm going to do is just move this around. Yeah, there we go. Is select everything and go into our Pathfinder menu and press Unite. Or you can go into the little workspace area here and press Unite as well. And now it's all one shape. So I really like the way that this curves out, so it feels more organic. This is kind of abrupt the way this ends, so I'm going to do the same thing I showed you before in the beginning with the pen tool and rounding it out, and I'm going to round it out with a direct selection tool. So we're going to go to the top left corner, get the direct selection tool, and click this, and make sure to double click the anchor point that you're going to use, right? So if this anchor point is what you're going to record or what you're going to use, double click, and then round it out. If you don't double click, it's going to edit all of the corners. So just be careful and don't panic. Round it out, double click, round it out, double click, round it out, double click, round it out. Now, what if you run into issues with your corners? Well, sometimes your corners are, if you zoom in really close, there are anchor points that are too close together to make these corners. What you need to do is essentially, just like this actually, what you need to do is zoom in, and you want to combine these corners. So to do that, you're going to grab it with your direct selection tool. Oh, press cancel. You're going to grab this anchor point and put it directly on top of this other anchor point. Now, when you go into your regular selection tool, press this and then press Unite. Now, notice that since it's a single object, it's not going to pop up over here. But since we put this Pathfinder like tab here, we can just always have access to it. So sometimes this doesn't work, but we'll see. V. All right. Or no, press A or the direct selection tool. And see, these are two separate points. So we're going to delete this. Right. And we're going to move these handles down. Oh. Yep, fine. And these two are still pretty close together. And so we can just edit it down so that they're right on top of each other, like this. And then go to our regular selection, or V, press, and unite. Now they should just be 1 point. Press direct, check. Yep, it's 1 point now, and now you can make that beautiful curve. Curve, perfect. All right, our neuron's looking very neurony. And now we want to match the color of this here. Now you notice how there's like sort of like a soft shadow that goes around this whole thing. Well, we can do the very same thing actually. If we click this and press, pick a color first, like this dark brown. I'm gonna go with this one actually, yeah. And if we go to FX, and we go to the Illustrator Effects Stylized section, and press Inner Glow, this pops up. So what you want to do is make sure that this is set to center, because if it's on the edge, the glow is going to be on the outside. But if the center, then it's going to go from the inside. And you can edit the blur as you wish. I'm going to set it to, let's see, let's do 8. Yeah, let's set it to 8. So now that I'm pretty satisfied with this, so the cell body and the dendrites, or with the dendrites, yep, we're going to work on the axon. So what I want you to do is use the very same pen tool that I showed you before and make this shape. Now you can use the sharp angle method or the curve method that I showed you, but always make sure that your fill is transparent and that your stroke has at least like 1 or 2 points in there, just so you can see what's going on. Now clicking this and doing this like this. All right, I'm just going to do that one more time, just in case you guys forgot. Fill should be transparent. Stroke should be black for now. And then we're going to make one curve. Make another curve. And then make one more curve. Let's just do 2 curves. So this one and this one. Perfect. It looks beautiful. And to make sure that it looks like this, we can actually combine these together using the same Unite tool. But first, what you want to do is save this little line, because we're going to be using it for highlights and shadows later. So grab the line, do the duplicate thing I taught you before, Alt, click, and then Shift to make sure it's like sort of like snapping, and make it go up. But we're going to make sure to do the Alt click first. Alt click and then Shift up. We're going to put it outside and we're going to bring it back down later after we've made this whole shape. Now, click this and we're going to do the very same thing we did with the branches and make sure that this is thicker here and thinner over here. So what I'm going to do is is make this a little thicker just so we can see. And then we're going to go to the width tool here, grab this and just make it thicker. There we go. It looks beautiful. Now edit this the way you wish. I'm probably going to leave it like this. And I want to make sure that this has like a rounded cap. So, just like before, go to the stroke section and go to the cap, rounded cap. Beautiful. Now, how do you make this look like this? Well, don't forget that when you press Command Y, it shows you what the actual shapes and the actual paths look like. And this is currently an open path. Now, you don't want to mix an open and closed path together because that's going to make it real weird. So what you want to do is press this and expand it just like before. So we're going to expand appearance. And now when we look at the X-ray vision, we see that this is all good. Now, if we press both this and this together using the regular selection tool and press Unite, this is what happens. It takes whatever's on top and makes the bottom look like that. So to fix this, all we have to do is put this on top of this. To do that, all you have to do is select with your left click and the regular selection tool, right click, and then press the arrange button and bring it to the front. Now, there's a lot of menu stuff that you can use with the right click. You can go to transform and reflect things and scale them up and move them and rotate them, but you can also arrange them. So these two are the main things I want you to focus on right now. Arrange and bring to front. Now, I want you to press this and press Unite again and see what that does. Oh, Jesus. This kind of undid the shape before, so we're going to fix that again. Select, Object, Expand, and then we do the Unite. And boom! There you go. It looks just like this one, and it looks great. So next thing we're going to do is add the highlight and the shadow. We're going to bring this line back down, press Shift, down arrow key. And we're going to make sure that since we're going to do the highlight first, we're going to make sure that this is on top. Now you can edit your line, don't forget, by pressing do direct selection or A, selecting the line that you're going to work on, and then moving it as needed. And we're going to make sure that this is also in the front. There we go. Gonna double click to move that point specifically. Gonna double click this point to move this one specifically. And double click this one to move it specifically, my words. Alright, now, how do we make this a highlight? Well, it's the same thing as before. We're gonna make sure that the stroke is white instead of this, and we're gonna make sure it's a little bigger so we can see. Now, I want to match the same thing where it gets bigger here and smaller here. So what we're going to do is go into our width tool again. We're going to make this a little thicker and then a little thinner over here. Oh, Command Z. All right. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but make sure you don't forget you can use Command Z to undo something that you've done. So go to our width tool again, or Shift W, and make this thinner. There we go. Alright, that looks beautiful. And what we're going to do now is do a Photoshop effect. Now this is going to rasterize the layer, but you don't even need to worry about that right now. we're gonna essentially blur this out so it feels a lot softer and it reads as a 3D circular or like 3D cylindrical surface. So we're gonna go to selecting, effect, and then we're going to blur and Gaussian blur. And I actually like the way it is right now, so we're gonna leave it as that, and this is what it looks like. See, it kind of like fades out and it really reads as a cylindrical object. Next thing we're going to do is shadow. So I want you to do the very same thing and duplicate this and move it down. And then I want you to edit the lines or edit the points so it actually lines up around the shadow area. There we go. Perfect. And then I want you to change the fill, or not the fill, the stroke, to a darker brown. A bit softer like that. And there we go. Let's see. Yep. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And there we go. It reads like a 3D object now. Now we're going to move on to making these olive-looking things, or myelin. To do that, we're actually going to go into our 3D workspace. So what I want you to do, just like we did with Pathfinder, is go to Window, go to 3D and Materials, and add that to your tool set. We're going to go back to that in a bit. To make this shape, it kind of we have to make a 2D plane first, and then we're going to revolve it around using the 3D tool. So what we're going to do is go into our pen tool, and we're going to make points like this. And we're going to make a 5-sided polygon. It's 5 sides, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5. Cool. And close this out. Press return or enter. Now fill this with the color, so blue. And we're going to make sure that there's no stroke. Perfect. Command Y to double check that that's there. Cool, cool, cool. And we're going to Shift Y to make it bigger. All right. Now I want you to bevel this out using that tool that we showed you before. So press A, or the direct selection tool. Press that anchor point and round it out. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to revolve this shape on itself. So we're going to go press with your regular selection, go into the 3D workspace and press revolve. Now it's going to revolve it, and it's interesting because if you edit the shape, it immediately edits it to what the 3D shape would look like. So for example, if I edit the shape so it's lower, it revolves around that shape. And this is how you move this around, like this. But what we're going to do is make sure that the highlight is on top, as that's where the light is, and make the shadow on the bottom. Okay. It's kind of fidgety, especially since it's a bit of a rudimentary 3D modeling space, but it does the job. So we're going to increase the offset a bit because I want it to look a bit like a bead, a bit like an olive. And I kind of vibe with it. Make offset a little bit bigger, and then we're gonna. I think we're gonna we're gonna extend this. It takes a bit of fidgeting to figure out like how much you want to like change the shape or like how you want the shape to look. So don't worry if it takes you a little while. Cool. All right. Kind of rounding this out a little, and then I'm gonna make this a little more visible by doing this and kind of making the shadows appear more. There we go. Yeah, I like this. So we're going to move this over where we're going to put it, and we want to make sure that this opening is big enough to actually fit this. Now this is going to be a little difficult, so feel free to pause the video while we're doing this to really take in all the steps, because it might get a little complicated. So after we arrange this to the orientation that we want, rotate it. There we go. Perfect. And kind of make it a little smaller. Oh. There we go. That's perfect. We're going to essentially use masks, which are ways to obscure different things relative to different things. To do this, all you need to do is use your pen tool and make a big shape that encompasses the entirety of the shape that you're going to cut into. So you're going to use this, and to make sure that it's a big enclosed shape. Enter. And then make sure that this is a different color so you can actually see which ones, or what you're working on. So pink, and then we're going to make this not very opaque. All right. Now that we've done this, we're going to make another shape that cuts into this shape. So we want to make sure that this part of the axon kind of like shows through. So what we're going to do is get the pen tool again and draw in a shape following our axon here. There you go. I want to follow that curve. All right, and now we have a fully enclosed shape within an enclosed shape. I'm going to change the color of this once more, just so we can see. And this. Now, to make this mask, all we need to do is subtract this shape, the green one, from the pink one. We're going to do select this and select the pink. And then we're going to subtract the front. And this is going to remove the shape in the front, so we only have this mask. Now, anything not selected by the mask is going to go away with the thing we're going to do next. So what I want you to do is make sure that this is very opaque, first of all. Fully opaque, because it affects the object underneath as well. And then select the 3D object that we made and go to Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. And you'll see what happens. You see, it takes away all the things that wasn't in the mask and essentially lets the axon through. And it looks like it's coming through it. So that's perfect. We're going to do it again for this one, but we're going to also use a different tool for this. But before we do that, I'm just going to adjust this a little, because our mask, it looks like, is taking a bit more off here than I'd like. So I'm just going to move this. Oh. There we go. And then we're going to do the same thing again. So make this fully opaque. Select our 3D model here along with the mask. Go to Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. Perfect. All right, there we go. And I kind of want the axon to show through. So what I'm going to do is make the actual olive or bead or whatever you'd like to call it a little translucent. There we go. Next thing we're going to do is make this shape right here. So to do that, we need the spiral tool. But if you look here, the spiral tool isn't in any of these menus. What we need to do is select our window, go to Toolbars, and then go to Advanced. And now all of these hidden menus are going to pop up, and you can find the spiral tool in the line segment tool. So press it, go to spiral, and there we go. We have our spiral tool. So press instead of making the actual thing, just press it. And I think we can do maybe a decay of 70. Oh, maybe not. Let's do a decay of 90. And let's make it 15 segments. Yeah, that looks great. Now what we're going to do is use the 3D material tab again. So we're going to use this tab. And instead of revolving, we're going to extrude. So what we're going to do is first give a stroke to this, and then we're going to press extrude, and there we go. There's our spiral turned 3D. Now what I want to do before is actually make this a little bit deeper. So after we do this, gonna rotate this around so the highlight's on top. Takes a bit of getting used to. Rotate around X. We're going to increase the depth to, yeah, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to rotate. Oh, no, not that. I'm going to have to rotate this. Sure, that's... Go. All right, I think that looks pretty good. It's a bit more shadow than I'd like, but I think it's fine. So what we're going to do is literally the same thing that we did before. We're going to make a clipping mask using the pen tool. So click the pen tool, make that big enclosed polygon, and make sure that the stroke is transparent. The fill is that same blue. Oh, no, it doesn't really matter what the color is. And then make sure that it's not super opaque so you can see what's going on. And the same thing again, we're going to grab the pen tool and draw in another shape to subtract from the red shape. So we're going to follow along this axon. We could go in there. Perfect. And then we're going to go... And let's make this shape actually a little bigger, because I want it to go inside here. There we go. Yeah, let's do that. Perfect. Now click, click, click. Oh, crap. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Click. And it seems like there's another line here, so we're going to extend this. There we go. right, and what we're going to do is make sure that this is fully opaque before we do this again. We're going to subtract this from this. Ready and go. Perfect. And then, same thing, we're going to select this and the 3D shape. Go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and boom. We have our spiral going around the axon here. And we're going to make this a little less opaque just so we can see it. All right. Looking great. We're almost done. The last thing we're going to need to do actually is make the cell body. Now you can do this, and this using the very same strategies we did here. But what we need to do for this one is make a circle. And fill it. With the very same sort of brown there. There we go. And we're going to be using a different tool other than the inner glow. Now, the thing with Illustrator is that it can be really, really smart if you give it the right context. If you, for example, use the eyedropper tool, which often is used to pick specific colors out and stuff, we can change this to match this. So we press this object right here and make sure that if you double click, you can pull up this menu essentially. And you want to make sure that the appearance on both sides is the same. Once that's right, press OK. And then while you have the circle or like the shape that you want selected to match, you click the thing that you want to match. So say it's this one, and boom. It matches that exactly. Now what we're going to do is add like a highlight into it and also a shadow, or we're just going to add some variation in there. So we're going to add a circle like this. That looks great. And a circle. Let's duplicate that circle actually. So press Alt, click, drag, and let's make this circle white. And then all we're going to do is use the Photoshop effect again and blur both of these. So we're going to select both, Effect, go to Blur, go to Gaussian Blur, move the radius down a bit, and boom. Now if we remove this thing, what we're left with is our beautiful, beautiful axon, or neuron. That's about it for our workshop here. Feel free to drop a comment if you have any questions, and please make sure to pause the video if you're confused, and just take your time with it. It takes a bit of getting used to. If you want any more in-person assistance on this topic, please feel free to visit the Digital Media Commons in the location of Fondren Library, or in the basement of Fondren Library, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you guys for hanging out.